Hello, and hello, especially to folks who were not able to be at our stamp club meeting today. And today we are going to be making a card design that we made a few years ago. We're going to be revisiting some of the card designs that we've done in the past and looking at them with fresh eyes, with new products, and just, getting some oldies but goodies back into the forefront. This is what I call a double easel card. It has two peaks, and when it stands up, hard to see when you're looking at it from an angle going down, but it stands up and it has two sort of tent fold parts. Super, super easy to make. And obviously, I've used a lot of the Cute as a Bug collection to make this, but you do what you want to do. It's a great way to use up designer series paper. You're going to use a big piece here, and you're going to use at least one piece on the front. So you're going to have a lot of options for that designer series paper that I know you have stashed away. And I'm just going to start. So I've started with a piece of very vanilla, and it measures 4¼ by 11. So it's really half a card sheet. And all I did was I took the half card sheet and just imagine that it's, 8½ by 11. I cut it in half at 4¼ This is a very simple card base. And all I'm going to do is put this in my scorer. And on the 11-inch side, I'm going to score it at 5½. I'm essentially making this into an A2 card. And then I'm going to go ahead and burnish this. I'm going to grab my bone folder, which you should have already had out. So I'm just going to fold that in half, give that a good burnish. This is going to become obvious enough, the back, the real large tent fold. The second piece that I'm going to use is a piece of cardstock. And I'm choosing the Blackberry Bliss. This is one of my favorite colors that is very rich. It is a color that goes with an awful lot of other colors. And this is cut so that it is 4 inches wide and an interesting length. It's 10¼ So the way that I did this is I started with an 8½ by 11. I cut at 4 on the 8½ side, and that gave me a piece that was 4¼ by 11. And then I cut off 3/4 of an inch. So I went down from 11 inches to 10¼ This is going to become 3 pieces. We've got one that's going to be layered onto the cardstock we just used. And then we're going to create this little V, or I guess it's an upside down V, a little mountain in the front. That means that we need to put 2 score lines on this piece. And they're pretty straightforward. So I'm going to grab my scoring board. And the score lines are going to go on the 10¼ inch side, and there are 2. The first one goes at 2½. The second one goes at 5. Okay. Get that scoring board out of the way. And then we're going to go ahead and burnish this. I'm going to start with the score line at 5 inches. I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but at the 5-inch mark, and I'm going to go ahead and just fold that over. It is not going to be half of this piece of paper. You're going to see that it's going to be a little short than half. I'm going to go ahead and burnish that. And then the score line that was at 2½, I'm going to fold the other way. And I just want to get that kind of straight. So I'm going to end up, if I put this the way we scored it, this is the 2.5, this is the 5. So the 5 is a valley fold, the 2.5 is a mountain fold. So you're going to end up with something that looks like that. And let's just see what that means. So we've created, if I put these side by side, we've created the piece that is going to be put on the front. All right. So grab the card base that you made. The one that I made was very vanilla. Make sure that you have it in the right orientation so that it's opening from the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on the back of the largest part of what I'm using is Blackberry Bliss. And we're going to adhere that right in the middle of that card base. So you're going to have a frame all the way around. You could, if you wanted to, create the piece that I'm using the Blackberry Bliss cardstock for. You could make that out of designer series paper. And the only caution I would give you is I would use a pattern that has no direction to it. Flowers could look a little odd, but if it were a pattern that didn't have anything that had to be vertical, you could definitely do that. I'm triple checking that I have my card base opening the right way. And all I'm doing here is I am gluing down this piece on that very vanilla so that it is in the middle. And I'm going to put this on a piece of yellow so you can see it a little bit better. Very vanilla on white is not necessarily easy to see. So I'm trying to get this in the middle. What I'm going to end up with is something that looks like this. You've created the card base. That's how easy it is. And the rest of it is decoration. So those two pieces of cardstock come together and they form the double easel card. And I'm just going to give it a little bit more of a burnish because I really do want this to kind of settle down. And as we work it, we'll continue to burnish that periodically. So the rest of this, seriously, is all about decoration. And it's really what you want to add to the card. I have the measurements of the designer series paper on this piece. So I'm going to have to take it out for just a minute. I will put it back so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. The piece that is going to go in the back on this panel is going to measure, if you use designer series paper, you can use whatever you want. It's going to measure 3 3/4 wide by 5 inches high. And notice that if you're using a pattern, this one definitely goes vertical. You want to make it 5 inches high because it's going to just show better. And when you get that, you're going to go ahead and put that piece right in the middle of the Blackberry Bliss. So right in the middle of that panel that you added on to the first card base. I used the designer series paper from the Cute as a Bug collection. It is stinking cute, pun intended, and it has some really, really nice colors in it. There are some patterns like the one that you're seeing on the back that are more neutral. Many of the pieces do have critters or flowers. It's very bright and springy and something that we need at the moment with the cool weather that's creeping back in. So I'm just going to put that down on the Blackberry Bliss, and I'm making sure that all around the border is about the same. And I'll give that a little bit of a burnish because I do want that to be flat. Okay. The next part of the card to design and decorate is this front flap here. And obviously when you stand it up, you're going to be looking straight at it. If you stand it up, you're going to see this flap. So consider that for just a minute. You have some space that is higher than the flap to put things, like I did. You don't have to restrain yourself to only being in this rectangle. You shouldn't go beyond the rectangle on the right and the left, but you can definitely go high. The other thing is when you're looking at the design, and I'm going to use this one as an example, I purposely did not put anything on this piece, especially low, because it won't be seen. What's going to be seen is this small piece and anything that you put on top. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at it. What I like to do is when I'm putting this all together is kind of push this down and just see how is it going to look? Am I hiding something in the back? Okay. What I chose to do, because I was using a piece of cards, a piece of designer series paper. Let me show you. This is from Cute as a Bug, and I'll give you the measurement in just a minute. Initially, I was going to put this piece directly on the front. And frankly, I did not like the way that looked. I wanted to have more of a border. So I decided to put a very vanilla border around that piece of designer series paper. These pieces measure the designer series paper that the cardstock I'm going to put on first measures 3 3/4 inches wide, same as what we did up here for the designer series paper. And it is 2 1/4 inches high. So 3 3/4 inches wide, 2 1/4 inches high. And I did send these measurements out in an email. If you have not seen that, you can check. I'm trying to say this slowly so you can write it down as well. And then the designer series paper that I'm going to put on top of the Very Vanilla is 3 1/2 wide by 2 inches high. This is also from the Cute as a Bug collection. And I'm just going to go ahead and take that designer series paper and I'm going to put that right on top of the Very Vanilla. I thought this was kind of cute because it sort of looks like a tablecloth or a blanket that you might bring to a picnic. And since I'm going to put ants on as some of the decoration, it was appropriate. So all I did here, designer series paper on the cardstock, and I'm going to put that layered piece on the front. Super easy. There's so many options. I mean, think about it. You could put an embossed piece of designer series paper or an embossed piece of cardstock on the front. You can adhere it directly. You can use dimensionals, all sorts of different ways to decorate this card. And all I'm trying to do here too is I'm trying to get the same distance from the edge that I have on the top and the bottom, just so it looks kind of even, because they're both 3 3/4 inches wide. So there. Now we have more of our canvas to work with. And if I bring in the example card, I focused much, much, much more on decorating the bottom, this section, than on the top. The only things that I put on the top were a couple of embellishments from the Ladybug Garden epoxies. I just put 2 little things. I thought this was busy enough that it didn't need anything. But the bottom, well, the bottom needs something. So what I did, just as a piece of information, part of the Cute as a Bug collection includes some adorable stamps and dies. And also, I've already talked about the designer series paper. These two pieces are part of the designer series paper. They're from the same piece. And all I did with that is I cut the paper out and then I glued what I cut out to a piece of very vanilla cardstock. And you're probably wondering, why in the world would you bother doing that? Well, I did it for two reasons. One is I wanted the die cuts to be a little more sturdy than designer series paper. I wanted to have a little more depth, a little more structure to them. The other reason is if you look at this card from the back, you could see the back of those die cuts. And if I just leave it as the designer series paper, there's going to be a design on the back. I didn't want that. I wanted them to be completely neutral. So what I simply did is, like I said, I glued the paper, and then what you're going to find is that there are a couple of pieces of the cardstock, no, designer series paper, that correspond perfectly with the dies. These dies are so fun. So for example, you get a ton, but one of them is this little caterpillar with the leaf, sort of umbrella leaf. And I simply put that die right over the image and cut out the image. And since I had it on very vanilla, the back doesn't have a design. So that's why I did that. And then I just kept on going. The dies include ones that will cut out. What else did I cut out? I've got my caterpillar. I've got my little ants. The stamp is actually 3 ants in a row. And when you die cut them, the die cuts out each of the ants individually. And I also cut out these lilies that are going to go on the card. These are some extras that I had from another project, and I did the same thing. Simply die cut them from the designer series paper. There are just tons. I was able to cut out every single element that was on the sheet of cardstock, or I keep saying cardstock, designer series paper with the dies, because there were that many that correspond. So it's definitely a really cool collection to use if you want to try that. All right. So obviously I am not going to die cut these since I already did, but hopefully my explanation made some sense as far as how I die cut them. The other thing I wanted to do, because I wanted to continue to use some of the products in the suite, is the sentiment is from the Sweet Bugs, and it's the Love You Lots. I didn't want to make it super complicated because I really wanted the critters to shine. So I simply took a piece of scrap, very vanilla, and I did the Love You Lots, stamped that with Blackberry Bliss, so it matched the cardstock that's in the background. And then I cut, and I just used my scissors to cut out a kind of a rectangle. And those are the elements, and a double linen thread bow that I'm going to use to put on the front. And I'll kind of mimic what I did, but I might change it up just a little bit. One thing to be very careful about when you are doing this is make sure that your glue is going where you want your glue to go. So I would not put any glue on the back of that leaf, because when I put this down, there would be a possibility that leaf would get glued to the back of the card. Don't want that to happen. I know that I can put glue on the bottom of the body. I don't need a lot. So I'm just going to put some glue on the bottom, and that's fine. He or she is not going anywhere. And then I can just kind of figure out where I want this little guy to go. And that looks good to me. I do need to make sure, so I'm going to move him around a little bit, that that leaf is not going to go over the edge of the card. Otherwise, the card is not going to get into an envelope. And this will fit fine in an envelope. So there's the caterpillar. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the sentiment on. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to align the right side of the sentiment where I cut it off so that it is flush with the right side of that piece of Very Vanilla. I just thought that looked kind of clean. And I'm going to raise this up a little bit more than what I did on the other card. Just because. Since this entire piece is going to be on that panel, on the front panel, I can put glue on the entire part, and that will be fine. I didn't put a lot of glue because I may be moving this one around a little bit, and if I do, I could get glue where I don't want it to go. And just futzing around to make it look as straight as I can. That's good enough. Okay. I have my little lily, and I want to put the lily up in the corner. And this is a really important one as an example. The only place I'm going to put any kind of glue is going to be on the back, right down here, because there's a lot of this piece that's hanging over the edge, and I do not want to take the chance of gluing this card together. So a little bit of glue, and trust me, it's not going to go anywhere. It is going to hang out right there. And I'm making sure it's sort of straight. I want to watch where that leaf is because I don't want that to go over the side of the card, but it can hang over the top of the front. So there are my lilies. And then I'm going to mess around with these little ants. They're so cute. They really are cute. And I thought it would be a lot of fun to make it look like they were walking on top of that sentiment. So we got this guy playing the trumpet. Got another little one carrying a flag. So fun. So I'm going to go ahead and put them right there. And then I'm not going to have enough room to put where I put the other guy. Let me show you on the other card because I purposely did this one a little different just to shake things up. So on this other card, I made the sentiment lower so these guys could ride on it. And then I had enough room for the little ant to be under the lilies. Well, that's not going to work over here. That's fine. He's going to be down here having a good old time. Cute enough. All right. The ants are going to be entirely on that panel, so I don't need to worry about where I'm putting the glue, but I'm still not going to put a lot. So he's going to go about there. And you guys know me well enough to know that this is out of my comfort zone a little because I normally don't do a lot of critter stuff. But these guys are super cute. And then I'm just going to make sure he looks like he's walking and put him right there. Now I could put this one up at the top, but I don't like that. So I'm going to stick him down at the bottom here and make it look like he's walking on the bottom, that bottom vanilla part. I have my little critters on the front. And what's left is any kind of embellishments that you might want to use. And one of the embellishments that I'm definitely going to put on is a ladybug. And it's a very just innocent ladybug. You can kind of see in the finished card on the left that it's in the back on the designer series paper. Just to add a little more something something. And again, make sure that wherever you're adding embellishments that you can see them. So I would never put an embellishment down in here because when that front piece is showing, you wouldn't see it. It would be a total waste. But I am going to put a little ladybug. I'm going to push that front down so I can make sure that I know where the ladybug will be seen. These are so stinking cute. And I think it's really easy to see on the green. So I'm just going to pick a green. I like that one. So I'm going to stick the ladybug right on the green leaf. And I also like these, they almost look like dewdrops. And they're kind of hard to see if you're not really looking at the card in person, but they're really pretty. They're just add a little something. So just add a couple of those. I really love that ladybug. And they keep selling out. They will be back. I think they're out of stock maybe again. They've been out at least twice. They're very, very popular. And very, very fun to use. They're also pretty flat. They don't add a lot of depth. They're not as flat as the hearts, the gold hearts, or the brass butterflies, but they're still pretty tiny. Now, where do I want to stick this little guy? Because he's going to be on in a very different place than the other one was. The other one I put right by the sentiment. I had plenty of room because I stuck the small ant up at the top. And I don't want to cover up the ant. I could put it kind of at an angle, but that's going to go off the card, so that's silly. I may actually just kind of leave this off for now, since I am not inspired. Unless I put it down here, but I'm not inspired. So maybe I don't use the bow. That's fine. I think it's perfectly cute the way it is. There you have it. It is that simple. It is putting the base together, the vanilla, berry vanilla that we started with, adding a layer of color with a second piece of cardstock, in my case, the Blackberry Bliss, picking out some designer series paper and coordinating either designer series paper, whatever you're going to use in the front, putting the larger piece, obviously, on the back, smaller on the front, and then decorating however you want. And I think this is a really great design to highlight little critters like this. It gives them, it makes them have a little bit more motion on the card because they're out in front. They have a little bit of depth. And I really think that you will enjoy making this design, and you'll find a ton of different occasions to use this design for. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to finding some other cards that we have made in the past that we are going to revisit and just use some more products, newer products to make. So until then, happy stamping.